to then think about some of the longer term goals. And on the debt side, most people tend to focus on the higher interest consumer type debts first. And then the last debt that many of us have is our mortgage. And this is a very interesting time point that people face when they're faced with the decision of do we pay our mortgage down faster, or do we put more money towards savings? And I find that what sets people apart here is really their risk tolerance. So a lot of people feel much more at peace with their finances when they don't have any debt. And other people don't mind having mortgage debt and putting more money aside towards longer term savings for things like their retirement, renovations, major vacations, weddings, things like that.
One question that we did get was about planning to pay for a wedding and all the different ways you could do it. Do you just try to only pay cash? Do you get a loan? Do you use a credit card? How do you manage all of that? And I think that a wedding is just an example. It's like we could take out the word wedding and pop in the word like renovation or vacation or whatever. How do you go about like planning to pay for all that? And a wedding in particular, because there's all these little pieces leading up, right? You have to put down deposits depending on how large your wedding is and what you're planning to do. Sometimes you have to like pay for things ahead of time. Sometimes a lot of money is due on the day of. There's all these aspects, right? Paying a dress, you do that ahead. So I think that there are tons of options. You really just have to look at all of them, maybe even write them all down so you can see all of your options in front of you and then make a decision. So if you're comfortable, like Marilee said, carrying a little bit of debt and the wedding is a place that you're comfortable, I don't want it to sound negative, but like making a sacrifice of carrying debt, and I don't necessarily mean that negatively, because it's important to you, then you could decide what amount of money am I comfortable with carrying debt for to pay for this wedding. If you're not comfortable with that, then maybe make a list of all, like how much money a month could you put towards the wedding, and then start putting that money into those sinking funds or your wedding bucket. And, so that every month you're contributing a little bit to that you can pull from it when those things are due. And maybe you come up with a balance of that. Maybe you're like, you know what, there's a few things I'm going to put on a credit card and I'm just going to pay them off over the next year or 6 months or whatever your plan is. And then I'm going to pay for as many things as I can with cash leading up to it. But I really think you have to just come up with what's right for you. I know there are people who take out a loan for X amount of dollars and that's their wedding money. And then they just use that money for the wedding, and the money they would have spent every month, they just use towards paying it back. So you really just have to think about all of your options and what makes the most sense for you and what makes you most comfortable. Do not, on your wedding day or on your big vacation or standing in your new kitchen, stand there with huge regrets about the way you paid for it, right? So doing some planning ahead of time will make it to the point where when you get there, you're enjoying the wedding, you're enjoying the kitchen or the vacation because you feel really good about how you strategized your payment for this, instead of just like, throwing caution to the wind, putting the entire thing on a credit card, and now you're freaking out about how you're going to pay for it. I really think planning and thinking about all your options in advance is kind of the way to go with these types of things.
Yeah, and I would add on thinking about how much you're willing to spend for each item. Like a wedding, we have flowers, we have the venue, we have, right, all of the things. And so really thinking about what are the most important pieces for you first, and then how much money are you going to allot or budget or allow yourself to spend in each of the areas. Because if you really go in either saying, I'm going to spend as much as I need to get this, but then that means I'm going to have to spend less on these other things, or the opposite, I'm going to spend a little less on everything, right? But really, what's your overall budget? Like Jen said, what are you willing to take some debt for, or what are you willing to not? And then so how am I going to allocate those funds? And trying to have future empathy for yourself. So think 5 years after the wedding, 5 years after the renovation. Are you going to be glad that you spent that much money? Or if you had spent a little less, would you feel the same in the same place, right? So have some empathy for yourself and try to do some thinking about the spending as well, how much you're willing to spend for which quality or which items, things like that.
That is a great tip. Like instantly 72 things popped into my brain. So I'm just going to share a couple quick examples. One, for our wedding, I was like, I don't care. There's a bunch of things I didn't care about. I really wanted to spend money on a photographer because I was like, the pictures are the only thing I'm walking away from this day with. And so to me, that was where my priority was, these pictures. And then I made a lot of stuff myself because I was like, I don't really care as much about that. Like, it'll be totally fine if I make it, but I won't have to, it'll let me put more money to the things that matter most. So that kind of priority list. Same with travel. Are you going to be in your hotel room ever? Or is this the kind of vacation where you're just always on the go? If you're always on the go, you don't need to pay for an expensive room. But if it's the kind where you're just going to spend a lot of time lounging and relaxing in that hotel room and taking in that vibe, that's the kind where you spend a little more. You know, renovations. Are you really going to regret that you went with the $10 square foot tile versus the $40 square foot tile when you're in the shower every morning? Like, you know, I think that thinking about your future self and what you're going to think about in the future is like a huge piece for almost every money related item, right? Like, how is future me going to feel about this spend that I'm doing right now or this savings that I'm doing? That is great advice. I want to like write it across the top of my like budget sheet. How is future you going to feel about this?
Yeah, it's a great thing to just have up on the wall or on your budget sheet because we forget it so easily, right? We're in the moment of making the decision on how much and what we're going to purchase. Sometimes it's just what we're going to purchase. We don't even care about the cost. Like you said, if it's a real priority, like photography, you're more willing to spend more money. But if we do that on everything, then all of a sudden we don't have a budget or we spent way more than we should have, right? Yeah, and that brings me to 4 strategies that I like to use to think about this balance between how much I'm saving and how much I'm repaying my debt. And the first one is to set up automatic payments. So by setting up automatic payments, either repayments on your debt or payments into a savings account, it takes away the emotional aspect, right? You don't have to sit there and say, should I put it here? Should I put it there? I don't have enough. $5 won't make a difference, right? This is the kind of like emotional negative self-talk that we get stuck in. So if you actually just set up, I'm going to make X amount of a payment on my debt every month, and I set it up to go out automatically, I will not have to worry about the emotional piece, and I will make sure I budget so that that payment can go out. And with automatic payments, what I recommend is setting them up right after you get your paycheck. Now, I understand if you have a variable income, you might not get a set amount on a set date, so that makes it a little bit harder. But look back a few months and see, like, when do I have enough funds to set up those automatic payments? Maybe it's the 15th of the month, maybe it's the 1st of the month. But that really helps take away the emotional element, and it helps with the consistency. You don't look back and say, oops, I haven't paid off my debt in 3 months, right? It helps consistently chip away at it or add to your savings. The second one is to really pay attention to your interest rates and then make decisions based on those numbers. So I wouldn't do this frequently, especially if you're setting up automatic payments, but every once in a while, pay attention to that. Where are the interest rates now? For example, yesterday I just moved my emergency fund to another high yield savings account that I already had. It's actually a money market within our brokerage account. And I realized that high yield savings account was paying 1% more than the where I had my emergency fund already. Well, that's another almost $100 a month. So I just went ahead and moved that over, and I just made that decision based on the numbers. I looked at the interest rates. I already had that account. So it was literally a matter of moving it over to that account. Another big piece is celebrating small milestones. We've got to like cheer ourselves on. We got to be our best cheerleaders and celebrate. I did it for 3 months. I've been paying away my debt. Or for 3 months, I've been building my emergency savings account. For 3 months, I've been investing in the stock market, right? And then just really the fourth one is to get your plan in place. No matter what plan you have, you will make progress if you get it started and in place, right? If you make a plan, you're going to achieve what you want to achieve and meet those goals. And so get that plan in place and get started. Even the smallest amounts start working for you. And again, like we talked, I think in last week's episode, that motivation to see that you are ticking away at those numbers or adding to that savings account is a huge part of your money mindset and will really end up overall affecting how you spend and how you save and how you pay off your debt as a whole financial picture, right? The motivation is really, really an important part of that. So thanks for joining us today in a conversation about saving and paying off debt, trying to decide how much and which one to do. And what we're really thinking about and talking about is how can we do both? How can we work towards both in a sustainable way for you? So remember, we'd love to hear from you. Please send us your thoughts, your questions. Be sure to like and subscribe our podcast so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And we're looking forward to chatting with you next time.